Have you ever heard a story so unbelievable, so completely wild that it just had to be made up? Well, today we're looking at stories that prove reality can be way more bizarre than anything we could ever imagine. You know that old saying, right? It's a classic for a reason. There are some real-life events with twists so perfect, so scripted, that if you read them in a novel, you'd probably roll your eyes and say, "No way."
So, to show you exactly what we mean, we've got 3 incredible true stories lined up. Each one is going to make you question the very line between just a random coincidence and maybe something more. Let's dive in.
Okay, our first story takes us back to the final days of World War II. We're on a small island in the Philippines where a Japanese soldier named Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda was about to start his own private war, one that would last decades after the rest of the world had moved on.
So, Onoda's mission was simple: sabotage the enemy's airfield. But things went sideways. Allied forces swarmed the island, the Japanese army pulled out, and in the chaos, Onoda and his comrade Kozuka were just left behind. And as far as they were concerned, the war was still very much on.
And so they kept fighting. They lived off the land, hiding in the dense jungle, and carried out their mission. But here's the truly tragic part. They weren't attacking enemy soldiers. They were attacking innocent Filipino farmers, sabotaging their crops, convinced they were still fighting for the emperor. This was their entire reality. And the timeline here, it's just staggering. The war officially ends in 1945. For the next 27 years, they keep up their guerrilla war. Then, in 1972, Kozuka is killed in a shootout with local police. It takes another 2 years after that, all the way to 1974, before Onoda finally surrenders.
Just let that sink in for a minute. 29 years. For almost 3 whole decades, this man was fighting a war that existed only in his head. He was a ghost, haunted by a duty that ended long, long ago.
People tried, They dropped leaflets from planes, they sent search parties, but Onoda thought it was all just enemy propaganda, clever tricks to get him to give up. So what or who could possibly get through to him?
Well, the answer is something straight out of a movie. The Japanese government tracked down his old commanding officer, who is now an old man running a bookstore. They flew him all the way to the Philippines, and only when Onoda heard the direct order to stand down from the man who gave him his original mission, only then did his 30-year war finally end. Unbelievable. All right, for our next story, we're jumping to 1958, Santa Cruz, California. A young guy named Frank Isco is driving his truck along a dark, winding coastal road. He's got his 2 friends with him, and they're all just trying to get home.
Frank's going a little too fast. His wife is pregnant, he's anxious to get back. But in the pitch-black night, he misses a sharp curve. He slams on the brakes, the truck spins out, smashes right through the guardrail, and then nothing. They're airborne, plunging off a cliff toward the ocean. They're bracing for the cold water, for the end, but instead of a splash, there's this enormous crash of metal on rock. The falling just stops. By some absolute miracle, the truck landed on a rocky ledge about 20 feet down, saving them from the fatal drop into the sea below. They're shaken up, but they're all alive. Okay, so his friends scramble out the passenger side onto this life-saving ledge, just thanking their lucky stars. But Frank's door is jammed shut, so he thinks, okay, I'll just climb out the window. His friends watch him, he swings his legs out, he lands on the ledge, and then he just vanishes. Gone. And here is the absolutely brutal twist. That miracle ledge that saved their lives wasn't solid. Right where Frank landed, hidden by the darkness, was a blowhole, an opening to an underwater sea cave. The very thing that saved them became a deadly trap, and as the tide rose, he was lost. Our last story takes us to Cairo, Egypt in 1966, and here we meet Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim, a man in charge of all of Egypt's ancient treasures. He's facing a decision that's been eating at him for months. So here's the deal. French officials desperately want to borrow some of King Tut's priceless artifacts for a huge exhibition in Paris. But Dr. Ibrahim is deeply conflicted. To him, moving these sacred objects out of Egypt feels like a profound disrespect to the ancient pharaoh. The French, on the other hand, argue it's the ultimate sign of honor, sharing his legacy with the entire world. After months of this back and forth and hours of final arguments, Dr. Ibrahim finally starts to come around. Maybe they're right. Maybe this really is the best way to honor King Tut. He gives in. He agrees to the loan. The deal is done.
You can just imagine the relief he must have felt. This huge weight is finally off his shoulders. He leaves the meeting, walks out of the government building, and starts crossing the street to go home.
And just like that, literally moments after making the decision that had tormented him for so long, a truck came out of nowhere, struck him, and killed him instantly.
Now, to really understand how chilling this is, you have to know about the legend of King Tut's curse. It's this belief that a terrible fate awaits anyone who disturbs the pharaoh's tomb. And this wasn't the first time something strange had happened. Before this incident, at least 11 other deaths had been linked to people involved with discovering or handling the artifacts. Dr. Ibrahim's was just the latest, and maybe the most direct.
So what do we do with this? A soldier fighting a war in his head for 29 years, a car crash survivor whose miracle rescue was actually a deadly trap, and an official who dies the very minute he makes a fateful decision. What on earth connects these tales?
Well, the thread that ties them all together is a sense of profound, almost poetic irony. The soldier's greatest enemy turned out to be a figment of his imagination. The survivor's moment of unbelievable luck was also his doom, and the official's moment of decision, a moment of relief, led him straight to his end.
Each story is this perfect little self-contained tragedy that feels like it was written. It just leaves you wondering, right? Are these just horrible, random flukes in a chaotic world, or are there moments when reality itself seems to be telling a story, proving that sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction?